Hi, my dear students. How are you? Welcome to the session. My name is Juhi Narula, and in this video, we are going to solve some very interesting assumption questions. So let's get started. Now, we've already discussed there are three parts to an argument. And what are those three parts? One, the author writes the argument in order to reach to a claim or a conclusion. The point he or she wants to validate in the argument. Second, he would try to justify or she would try to justify the claim by presenting some supporting statements, which in technical terms we call evidence or premise. And at times what happens is that there is a technical flaw in the argument, something which has not been taken care of by the author. So what do we assume? That the author must have taken an assumption in order to support or validate the claim. Say for instance, I go to my boss and I say, sir, I need a salary increment. So I need a salary increment as my claim. Now, whatever points I justify in order to support my claim. So if I say, sir, my students are doing exceptionally well, there are some great selections that have happened. There are so many students who have moved to Ivy Leagues, my SAT and GMAT students. So what would happen is now that if my boss goes through the evidences, he might ask that, Juhi, you have not talked about the points like how many hours did you dedicate for extra teaching, right? Or how were you juggling with problem solving? So these aspects, maybe if I do not write and my boss is in a mood, in a happy mood to give me an increment, so he'll assume that Juhi, since her students are doing well, must have also taken these points into consideration. If he's not in a mood to give me an increment, he might question those points. So while I am writing the argument, if I'm presenting one letter to him that these are my credentials and I demand an increment, then I'm assuming that he'll consider these things to be true, right? So I'm sure now you are clear. So assumption is always implicit in nature. Like there's a match between India and Pakistan and we lose 2 wickets and Virat Kohli comes on the crease and you take a sigh of relief. So the assumption will be that he is going to play well. It is hidden. It's something which is not directly stated, right? Or it's cloudy outside, before leaving home you carry an umbrella. So it's an assumption that there is a possibility of raining, right? Or there's a match between India and Bangladesh and you're not liking the idea to watch the match. Instead you would want to do something more exciting because you're assuming that the match would be one-sided, right? So all these three cases, assumptions are hidden. They are not directly stated. So what do you do? See, if I explain it to you, there is a premise or evidence, both these terms I can interchangeably use, and the author wants to reach to the conclusion on the basis of the premise. At times there are logical flaws in the argument, we might also call it gap, which is not taken into consideration by author while establishing the argument. So in order to bridge this particular gap, we take into account the third part of an argument that we call an assumption. An assumption is always hidden in nature, right? It is always implicit. It is never directly stated. So please keep this in mind whenever you are, looking for an assumption. It is hidden. It is not directly, stated. So this will give you a good understanding and crux of the discussion. So when we talk about the basic approach, how to solve critical reasoning question, the first immediate suggestion would be that first read the question stem for any critical reasoning question, because when we talk about competitive exams, the questions would not be labeled. That means the question would not say that this is I am a CR question of assumption, I am a CR question of inference. That you have to gather after reading the question. So once you are clear with what the question is asking, going back to the argument or going to the argument for the first time would bring more clarity. Otherwise, if you first read the argument or the paragraph and then come to the question, and then you would find a need to revisit. So it's better to save the time here. First get clarity, what is the demand of the question, then go back to the question and then sort it out, right? So first thing is that you need to keep in mind is read the question, so you can see that this is how the question stem would look like. So the keywords would be, what is the author assuming, what is the presupposition, right? What is the assumption while the author is deriving the conclusion. So you'll get better clarity when we'll try the questions. As of for now, I'll give you a minute. Please take a note because you should be sure how the questions would look like. So wherever you are, making your notes for verbal ability and CR, please make it a point that you pen down these things. right? So let's move to the second step. Second step is to deconstruct the argument. That means you should identify the premise and conclusion in it and think of what are the flaws in the argument that the author has not taken care of. So once we are aware of the flaws, then it will be easy for us to bridge that particular gap or overcome that particular flaw by bringing assumption in the picture. So it's always wise to identify the components of an argument. So for conclusion indicators, you can look for words like therefore, hence, as a result, consequently, right? So these words help you reach to the conclusion identification easily. There can also be certain premise indicators, words like since, because. So pay attention to these words. This makes the game really easy for us, right? So you have to just make a conscious effort. You already know these words, they are nothing new for you, but you need to make it a point that you are taking a look at them while you are reading the argument, right? So let's move to the next step. Identify the loophole. So that's what I was trying to explain, that when the author tries to reach to the conclusion on the basis of the premise, there are certain aspects which are not taken care of. You might also call this as a loophole or a gap or a flaw in the argument. So how do we overcome the flaw? By taking assumption into consideration. So while we are trying to gather the a sense of the argument, please make it a point that you're looking for the loophole, because once the loophole is identified, then looking at the assumption from the answer choices would be actually a very easy task. So what is the assumption doing? That okay, so I read an argument which says that exercising leads to a fitter lifestyle or a healthy lifestyle. So you might say that only exercising would work. What about junk food? What about regularity? So these points the author has not discussed. So we are assuming that this is the most important factor in drawing the conclusion, right? So what are we trying to do? By assumption, whatever is logically missing in the argument, you assume it to be true in order to establish the conclusion. So first step would be to read the question stem. Second step would be to deconstruct the argument, where you are trying to identify the conclusion and the premise. And the third step would be where you are identifying the flaw in the argument. The next step would be to predict the possible solution. Always have an answer in your mind before you take a look at the answer choices. This will bring immense clarity and you'll find a considerable difference in your accuracy level. You will see your accuracy levels reaching to absolutely new heights when you are dealing with this particular step. So please make it a point that you predict an answer before you take a look at the options. The last step would be that you have an answer in your mind. Now you're matching it with the available options. So you need to do this, which we call a process of elimination. So what do we do in process of elimination? We eliminate the incorrect answer choices. So what will be the ground of eliminating incorrect answer choices? Let's discuss. So first ground of eliminating would be that eliminate answers which are extreme. So maybe you can make a list of such words: all, always, none, only, must, never. You should be always suspicious of such answer choices. Please make it a point that you are taking due note of extreme answers and you're eliminating them. Eliminate answers which are out of scope. So the questions are trying to judge your understanding of a given situation, right? So any answer choice which goes beyond the horizon of the discussion cannot be entertained as the right answer. Please don't use your previous knowledge, outside knowledge, to reach to an answer choice. This is the blunder that most of us do when we talk about critical reasoning questions. So these are the easiest questions till the students mess up, because they try to use their outside knowledge and their interpretations while they are dealing with the questions. Please don't do so. Please avoid doing so, right? As much as possible, please align your answer to the main text as much as possible, right? So don't get distracted from the outside knowledge, from your emotional appeal or instinct. Be as focused, as clear as you can be, right? So we'll try some questions now, though ideally we should do a few questions together, but I would always have this approach where the student takes a look at the questions, becomes a little familiar with what the information is, and then we'll discuss. So I'll give you 1 good minute. Maybe we'll you can just don't take this pressure to solve it, but just read the argument, go through it, and then we'll discuss it together. Do try to apply the steps. The steps we have already discussed. So what are the steps? The first step is to read the question, then deconstruct the argument, try to identify the loophole, predict the answer, and eliminate the incorrect answer choices. So 5 steps. Start your process right now. So let's read this. Which of the following is an assumption made by the parent? So basically, it is what? It is an assumption question. So we are clear with our task. Yes, we are trying all the assumption questions. So you might find that this is a repetitive step, but make it a habit. And to build a habit, you should, try to apply it wherever possible, right? So in a parent teachers meeting, a parent complained to the principal about the admonishment. So admonishment is when you are trying to scold somebody severely, right? So when it's an extreme term for bringing the PlayStation in the school. The parent stated that his son did not defy matlab refuse नहीं किया, कोई reject नहीं किया, मना नहीं किया of the teachers and did not show any disrespect. He claimed that such scoldings create negativity and is not good for the overall development of the child. So this is the conclusion and the basis is the premise, right? So if we can gather this, then what is the loophole? That the child was scolded because he brought the gadgets, and the father is feeling that scolding will bring negativity and this should not be done. So what is the father assuming? That there is no problem if he bought a gadget, so that was not actually a problem for which the child was scolded, right? So we know what the assumption would be. Let's see what are the possible answers. So see, we have actually performed all the steps. So students at times come to us and ask, ma'am, you talk about an approach, wouldn't it consume an extra time? It would never, right? It will bring more focus, more clarity, and it will be a habit that would be formed. So it would not require, maybe initially you might feel like that you're performing certain steps, but it is a rhythm, it is a direction that you have which will make the process easy rather than making it difficult, right? So let's see. The parents believe that having is an electronic gadget is not a problem, so he should not have been scolded, right? So we can keep this. Has no right to scold the student for. So no right will be extreme answers. Like I said, please eliminate incorrect answer choices. The in way one ground of elimination would be that you're eliminating answer choices which have extreme language. Such fancy gadgets should not be allowed. Again, extreme answer choice. The teacher should solely focus on the curriculum only. Again, extreme answer choice. The teacher should ask to provide apology to the student. So that was never mentioned, out of scope. So we can clearly mark A as the right answer, right? So I'm sure you are clear with the question and the approach now. Now let's move to the next question. Now I'll give you a good time to read the question and also try to parallelly solve it. So let's discuss. Which of the following is an assumption made by the author to reach the conclusion? So it's an assumption question. It has been observed that rock music albums created in collaboration with international stars show 70% more sales as those which are done individually. Clearly, so this is a conclusion indicator. Pay attention to such words. So this is the conclusion, this is the premise. It can be stated that music created with the help of international stars is more electrifying as created by individual musicians. So on the basis of the sales, they are trying to reach to this particular conclusion. So what is the flaw? That what about the other factors? So that has not been talked about. So what are you going to assume? That sales remains to be the most important factor in deciding the quality of music, right? So we know the predicted answer. Let's take a look at the options. The sales of album remain to be a measure of quality of music, precisely matching with our आंसर प्रेडिक्टेड आंसर. सो दे सेइंग कि जिनका कोलैबोरेशन हुआ था वहां पे सेल्स अच्छी हुई तो वो म्यूजिक ज्यादा अच्छा है. तो यानी कि पैरामीटर टू जज म्यूजिक कैसा है वो सेल्स है, यानी कि कोई और फैक्टर रिस्पॉन्सिबल नहीं है. ये ऑथर अज्यूम कर रहा है व्हाइल ड्रॉइंग द कंक्लूजन, राइट? सो वी कैन कीप दिस. It can be said that any album does well in sales as created by international. So any album is extreme, we can't say. It can be said no album created by individual artist has won outstanding accolades. So no album again extreme and nahi bol sakte. The musician of the nationality are not capable to create great work. Again, we can't say that. Out of scope. The local musicians receive less publicity. So publicity की बात नहीं हो रही. So even this goes out. So clearly, what can be our answer? A. Right? So I'm sure we are sorted with this particular question. Let's move to the next one. Please try it and then we will discuss. So let's discuss it now. Uh, what is the assumption made by the author to establish the conclusion? So it's an assumption question. Let's read the argument. Despite the fact that present supply of wood is sufficient enough to make furniture and for other purposes, the deforestation done to meet the needs of the increasing population will lead to environmental degradation. Hence, so it's a conclusion indicator. So this is the conclusion. This would be the premise. Hence, it is necessary to look for substitute for wood to meet the growing demand of people. So that means they're saying the problem will increase and we should look for the substitute, right? So the problem is going to intensify. Presently, it is sufficient, but still we should look for an option, right? So let's take a look at the options. Deforestation is the only factor responsible. हम ये नहीं कह सकते. Extreme answer है, eliminate कर दीजिए. प्रॉब्लम ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन विल इंक्रीज. यस, तभी उसके बेसिस पे वो कहते हैं कि आप एक सब्स्टिट्यूट ढूंढना चालू करो, तो इसको रख सकते हैं. इफ द पॉपुलेशन डज नॉट इंक्रीज दैट देयर इज नो नीड टू लुक फॉर सब्स्टिट्यूट्स, इसके बारे में आप नहीं बोल सकते. नो एफर्ट हैज बीन टेकन सो फार टू लुक फॉर ऑल्टरनेटिव्स ऑफ वुड, ये इंफॉर्मेशन हमें नहीं है, वी कांट कॉमेंट. Pollution is also another major cause for environmental degradation. Again, this is out of scope, right? So the only option that fits in will be B in the discussion, right? So I'm sure we are sorted. We are clear with the question. You can take a look again and understand why A is extreme, D is extreme, and C and E are out of scope answers, right? So let me write this also for you. This is extreme, right? And this is also extreme, and this is this we can't comment, right? And this is out of scope, right? So it's also very important to understand how are you eliminating the incorrect answer choices, right? So usually we try to keep our focus and energy only to find the correct answers, but it is also very important to understand that how the other answer choices are created so that you don't get into the trap, right? So please pay attention, understand the process, enjoy the process, instead of just getting this false happiness. I mean, it's not false, but just getting too happy and cozy and relaxed by reaching to the right answers. You should know how the game is played. That will bring more clarity, and that would require, I mean, ultimately, if you will be on a path to, put attentive energy and focus, then you will see that you'll reach to the correct answers with lesser practice. But if you are not paying adequate focus, if you're just doing with with just too relaxed mind, then you would need more questions to get the control and hold of the discussion, right? So I hope I make sense to you. Let's move to the next question. Try it and then we'll discuss. So let's do it. So it's an assumption question that we can gather after reading the argument. So let's come to the argument. On Valentine's Day, it was observed by a famous pastry shop, cake shop, okay, that chocolate flavored cakes were sold more as compared to butterscotch. However, the regular sales of butterscotch cake remained same. It can be concluded that chocolate flavored items are possibly sold more as compared to butterscotch flavored items. So they're saying कि Valentine's Day पे chocolate का sale ज़्यादा हुआ था as compared to butterscotch. Butterscotch का भी sale हुआ था, right? But chocolate flavor was sold more as compared to butterscotch. तो हम क्या कह सकते हैं कि भाई chocolate flavor की sale ज़्यादा थी. तो let's see how can we reach to the right assumption. If somebody prefers to buy chocolate cake, it does not mean that it does not like butterscotch flavor at all. Extreme answer है, eliminate कर दो. The chocolate cakes are bought more by young couples. We can't say, right? Out of scope है. A survey conducted by food companies suggested that butterscotch flavored ice creams are most served in wedding ceremonies. Again, this is out of scope. Concern तुम्हारा ice creams को लेकर नहीं है. और wedding ceremonies में क्या हो रहा है? This is not related to the argument. People in general like food items with chocolate flavor more. हाँ, तभी sales ज़्यादा है. तो yes, we can keep this. This relates well with the discussion. The pastry is trying to promote the newly launched orange flavored cake, again entirely out of scope. So the best fit will be D in the discussion, right? Take a minute again and be very sure why have we picked D as an answer. So let's move to the next question. Please try this, then we'll discuss. So let's discuss. Which of the following is the assumption considered by the owners of the disco to finally take the decision? So let's read. The number of episodes associated with eve teasing. Eve teasing is when you are misbehaving with the girls, okay? Had increased in the recent months in the famous discourse of Atlanta. So there's a problem that has occurred. In order to overcome this problem, the management team hesitantly decided. So hesitantly मतलब झिझक थी पर फिर भी decide कर लिया to stop the stag entry. Stag entry is where the boys, only boys are not allowed. Okay. So that's what we mean. So at times you have to be little aware of the language around you, because if you do not understand this, then you will be in trouble, right? In the discourse, the decision took a lot of time as the owners of the discourse were concerned with revenue going down. So of course you are prohibiting some entries, so your revenue will decrease. But the decision was eventually taken, right? So what must have been the thought कि बिजनेस इतना इम्पैक्ट नहीं होगा, अगर होता तो इतना बड़ा डिसीजन नहीं लेते, राइट? सो लेट्स टेक अ लुक एट द ऑप्शंस, एनीथिंग दैट मैचेस विद व्हाट वी हैव प्रेडिक्टेड. सो यू मस्ट हैव ऑब्जर्व्ड दैट व्हाइल आई एम प्रेडिक्टिंग द आंसर्स आई एम कीपिंग द लैंग्वेज टू बी वेरी सिंपल. हिंदी में क्विक सा 4 5 7 वर्ड्स, राइट? So that's what you need to keep in mind also while we are picking up the answers, right? Predicting the answers. If you are making if you're putting a lot of energy in framing an absolutely perfect sentence, going to consume unnecessarily a lot of time and it's not required. You are just doing this step to bring more clarity and accuracy, right? So let's take a look at the A choice. The similar discussion was taken by the disco in Audenville, where alcohol was banned but business did not go down. तो आप देखो, आप ऑर्डनविल की तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे, राइट? तो ये आउट ऑफ स्कोप आंसर हो गया. If this decision would not have been taken, the discourse would have lost its license. तो ये भी लाइसेंस की कहीं बात नहीं हुई है. Again, this is out of scope. The decision will see the increase in footfall of women, which will eventually balance the losses that will incur with the ban of stag entry. यही सोच के उन्होंने डिसीजन लिया हुआ कि रेवेन्यू बहुत ज्यादा इफेक्ट नहीं होगा. तो yes, this can be considered. The number of stag entries contribute significantly to the business. तो फिर वो decision नहीं लेते. So this can be eliminated. The cost to keep bouncers to avoid such incidents is not huge. So this is again something which is out of scope. So clearly C works as the best answer, right? So I hope we are sorted with this particular question, everybody. Now let's move to the next one. Give you a minute. Please try this, then we will discuss. So let's discuss this. Which is the presupposition made by the author to establish the conclusion. So clearly it is an assumption question that can be gathered, right? So if you have not noted, please note presupposition is also one way to create a question for assumptions. So let's read the argument. A wildlife photographer during his expedition in Sahara Desert was able to find a rare type of camel during the night, right? So he was in the, so this is a situation given to you where there was a wildlife photographer and he was, expedition means you're going out to, it's apart from travel, you have other objectives when you are, visiting a new area. During the day, the camel was difficult to find because the color of the skin was very similar to the color of desert. तो वो camel दिन में दिखता ही नहीं था, मतलब फोटोग्राफ नहीं ले सकते थे क्योंकि spoilage create हो जाता था. तो hence it can be concluded that if you wish to photograph the camel, this can only happen in night. Now two things you need to observe. पहला hence, so this is an indicator, right? So you can make a list of the indicators if you have not. Hence is one indicator, right? Consequently is another indicator. Clearly is another indicator, right? So these are words that you should know, right? Therefore is an indicator. As a result is an indicator, right? So always be observant. These are very frequently seen, right? So please note that you are observing these conclusion indicators. You can pen down these few words. This will make your life really easy when it will come to question solving, especially in critical reasoning, right? So you can make a list and then we'll of course take the discussion ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds to make the list. So I'm sure you made the list. So let's further take the discussion ahead. So you can observe another thing that this can only happen in night. तो ये conclusion itself is extreme, right? तो अगर बहुत conclusion ही बहुत strong है, तब you don't need to worry about the extreme answers. एक्सट्रीम आंसर का मतलब है कि ऑथर के क्लेम से ज्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं हो सकता. ऑथर ही कह रहा है कि और कभी ले ही नहीं सकते, तो ऑफ कोर्स वी हैव टू कंसिडर दैट पर्टिकुलर एस्पेक्ट, राइट? सो द foliage in the camel's habitat is completely brown. तो ये देखो very similar to the color of gold, right? Completely extreme हो जाएगा with what the point the author has established. No other species of animal which can be photographed easily. So other species are out of scope, right? So you can write it. The other species are out of scope. We are not talking about them. Now coming to C, no other species except the one discussed lives in Sahara. तो live कहाँ करती है, that we can't say, right? So again, living is aspect which is not discussed in the argument. So we would avoid answers which are out of scope. The camel cannot survive outside Sahara Desert. ये भी हम नहीं बोल सकते, right? So it's more or less the only concern of the argument is about the picture quality. अब that's the beauty of POE. आपने A, B, C, D तो eliminate कर दिया. So what is the only choice that's remaining in front of you is E. Now one major doubt that might be coming is that, ma'am, it is also extreme, but that is the reason I made it a point that this is not extreme because this is not making any claim which is stronger than the claim made by the author. So when the argument is saying this can only happen at night, that means there is no other way, right? So I hope it makes sense. We can pick up E as an answer choice. So you can make these quick notes wherever and whenever needed so that you get better clarity, better understanding. The objective of attending the session is not only to solve the questions but take some quick learning so that once you solve the questions on your own, you will be able to do them confidently and with better clarity, right? So I'm sure we are sorted with this question. Please try this. I'll give you one entire minute to do so and then we will discuss. Sure you have tried reading it. Let's discuss. Which of the following is an assumption made in the sentence, above sentence, that means above argument. So it's an assumption question. Let's try. In the health supplements provided to pregnant women, the key element is iron. Okay. There are few manufacturers which also add traces of magnesium and other salts to increase the nutritional value of the product. In certain cases, other nutrients, if taken without the advice of gynecologists, cause harm to the fetus. So, fetus is the child, okay? So, usually women take F3 plus supplement. तो कह रहे हैं कि आयरन आपका है, एक सप्लीमेंट होना चाहिए. अब कुछ और एडिशनल एलिमेंट्स को ऐड कर देते हैं जिससे फीटस को हार्म हो सकता है. तो इसलिए women take Fe3 plus as the supplement. तो वो वही सप्लीमेंट लेती हैं. तो वो मतलब वही सप्लीमेंट लेती होंगी जिससे फीटस को हार्म नहीं होता होगा. तो यानी हम कह सकते हैं कि और कुछ नहीं होगा जिससे फीटस को हार्म हो सकता हो. दैट मीन्स दैट्स व्हाट एन assumption is, right? So always try to be very quick while we are reaching to the predicted answers immediately, that what comes in your mind, so that you are able to uh, have an idea of what are you looking for when the options are presented in front of you, right? Lot of dilly dallying or dragging up the things, or assessing it too much will create confusion, right? So come to A. All women can consume Fe3 plus even without doctor's prescription. देखो हम all women की तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे, हम pregnant women की बात कर रहे हैं, right? तो all women तो एरिया ऑफ डिस्कशन ही नहीं है, पॉइंट ऑफ कंसर्न ही नहीं है. तो हमने ए चॉइस को एलिमिनेट कर दिया. अब आप बी पर आओ. ऑल द सप्लीमेंट्स हैव प्रॉपर न्यूट्रिशनल वैल्यू. फिर देखो ऑल सप्लीमेंट्स की न्यूट्रिशनल वैल्यू पे आप कमेंट फिर नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि हम तो प्रेग्नेंट वुमेन का केस ही कंसिडर कर रहे हैं, राइट? अब ऑल द सप्लीमेंट्स हो सकता है जो मेन ऑल्सो माइट बी टेकिंग, चिल्ड्रन और इन्फेंट्स और न्यू बॉर्न्स और किड्स माइट बी टेकिंग, राइट? सो we can't actually comment on all the supplements, so it would be too extreme. So B can also be eliminated. मैग्नीशियम कैन एट टाइम्स लीड टू स्लो ग्रोथ ऑफ एम्ब्रियो. तो इससे कंक्लूजन में इम्पैक्ट नहीं आता, तो इसलिए इसको भी एलिमिनेट कर दीजिए. सच एलिमेंट्स आर ऑल्सो एडेड इन द रेगुलर फूड ड्रिंक्स. तो अगेन वी कांट, हम फूड ड्रिंक्स के बारे में तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे. तो अब यही वापस ब्यूटी ऑफ प्रोसेस ऑफ एलिमिनेशन हो गया कि ए बी सी डी तो आपने एलिमिनेट ही कर दिया. सो व्हाट्स द ओनली चॉइस दैट्स लेफ्ट विद अस इज E. In Fe3 plus no other elements are present, so then it is safe, right? So women are taking Fe3 plus because iron is there, which is needed, and we don't need other traces as they might harm the fetus. So women are taking, they must be ensuring that there is no other element, right? So we will pick E as the final answer for this question. That's an interesting question, and you can take a look again. I'll give you another 30 seconds to please, now since you know the answer and we have discussed it, you can re-look at the question to get better clarity. Right, so I'm sure we are sorted. Also, with every question that you can see, I do a lot of scratch paper work, right? You can see I'm noting down the words, I'm eliminating, right? Please ensure that you also do so, right? If you're not going to do so, then it's going to create a lot of confusion. Scratch paper works definitely helps you bring clarity. This is a common trend which you must have observed in all my videos, that I use my pen as much as possible. So you can also see that we have done adequate scratch paper work. We are highlighting the words, we are eliminating, crossing out the incorrect answer choices. So this is a habit which I always tell my students to imbibe. This will, you do it in quant and you get better accuracy. So if you, why don't you do it in verbal also, right? So if you'll do it in verbal, you'll find your answers getting more accurate and effective, right? So on this note, let's come to this particular question. Try this and then we'll discuss it together. So I'm sure you've tried the question. It's time to discuss it. So, which of the following is an assumption made by the government? So, we are looking for an assumption what the government has made. So, bring clarity that what is the task assigned to you. At times, when we are missing on the questions, we really make a mess. So, don't do so. While making this decision of removing taxes on country-made fabric. So, let's read. So the government has made a decision. That's what the question is saying. Of course, so you'll get better understanding and better clarity once you are going to deal with the argument, right? So let's read it. In an attempt to promote make in your own country, the government has decided to remove taxes on the country made fabric, and this has led to lower cost of the country made clothes. तो इन हाउस जो आपकी कंट्री से कपड़े बन रहे हैं उन पे टैक्सेस कम कर देंगे, ये हटा ही रहे हैं तो प्राइसेस ऑफ कोर्स कम हो जाएंगे. दिस मूव हैज प्रोवाइडेड स्टिफ कंपटीशन टू फॉरेन ब्रांड्स एंड हैज गिवन गुड encouragement to local companies. So of course you're getting clothes at a cheaper price because taxes नहीं है, तो foreign brands को Indian brands, local brands Indian नहीं given है, तो that's what you get emotionally driven. तो इसका ध्यान रखो, local brands will be giving good competition to the foreign brands because the prices are low, right? सो अब गवर्नमेंट ने ये स्टेप क्या सोच के लिया होगा, क्या अज्यूम करके लिया होगा, दैट्स व्हाट द क्वेश्चन इज. तो एक बार आपको प्रिम एंड प्रॉपर क्वेश्चन की अंडरस्टैंडिंग बैठ गई तो यू विल फाइंड इट रियली इजी टू रीच टू द राइट आंसर्स. तो गवर्नमेंट ने सोचा होगा कि भाई कंपटीशन अच्छा मिलेगा तो लोकल सेल्स बढ़ेंगी. दैट्स व्हाट इट मस्ट हैव थॉट अबाउट. If the costs are reduced, people will buy more country made products, right? That's how you are promoting make in your own country. So we can definitely keep this, right? पीपल हु लाइक इंटरनेशनल ब्रांड्स विल रिमेन अनफेस्ड. तो ये गवर्नमेंट ने सोच के डिसीजन नहीं लिया होगा. लोगों को ये भी पीपल गेट इमोशनली ड्रिवन, उनको कई बार करेक्ट लग जाता है. तो आप ये छोटे छोटे ट्रैप आंसर चॉइसेस को जितना अवॉइड कर सकते हो करो, क्योंकि फिर क्वेश्चन की इंपॉर्टेंस है कि गवर्नमेंट ने क्या सोच के मेजर लिया होगा, राइट? कम टू सी पीपल डू नॉट फाइंड द लोकल स्टाइल्स वेरी अपीलिंग. फिर गवर्नमेंट ने अगर यही डिसीजन लिया होता तो प्रमोशन के फेवर में ना जाता. तो सी विल ऑल्सो गो आउट. द लोकल कंपनीज विल आस्क सेलिब्रिटीज. गवर्नमेंट ने तो ये सोच के डिसीजन नहीं लिया होगा, राइट? देयर इज कंसिडरेबल डिक्लाइन इन द सेगमेंट ऑफ फॉरेन क्लोथिंग. डिक्लाइन हो सकता है, आइडिया डिक्लाइन इन फॉरेन क्लोथिंग नहीं था. Promote make in your own country movement, right? So we will find A to be the most suitable answer choice, right? And I'm sure we are sorted on the question, so time to move to the next one. Please try this, then we'll discuss. Let's try this. Which of the following is the assumption made by the author? So this is what? This is an assumption question, right? So crops should be monitored to gauge early growth, emergence, seedling density, weed population, presence of insect and disease, and general crop health. All these factors impinge on the potential grain yield. So these factors should be playing an important role, and they should be seen properly, right? So let's take a look at the answer choices. So there is no other factor apart from the ones mentioned in the premise that leads to impinging of the potential. हाँ, ये बोला जा सकता है. यूज ऑफ पेस्टिसाइड्स की बात तो नहीं हो रही. नो मैटर हाउ मच एक्सटर्नल कंट्रोल एंड मॉनिटरिंग इज डन, वेदर विल बी सोलली रिस्पॉन्सिबल, नहीं बोल सकते, आउट ऑफ स्कोप है. द एग्रो साइंटिस्ट आर इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ आइडेंटिफाइंग अदर फैक्टर्स, वी कांट से दैट. Sweden has started, so Sweden की तो बात ही नहीं हो रही, right? So this also goes out. So clearly, बड़ा discreetly, clearly, prominently A pick हो जाएगा answer choice if you have good observation and if you are paying attention to the nuances, right? So let's move to the last question. Please try it and then we'll discuss it. So I'm sure you have tried it. Let's discuss what is the supposition. So please pay attention. This is another word for assumption. So don't get confused. Don't think that what is this new thing that has come. It happens. It happens under the stress of exam. People do make such mistakes. The residents of the Pearl Residency Society will participate in the process of effective decomposition of the waste since it was decided by the Residents Welfare Association in the monthly meeting. Mr. Park released the official note for the people of the society to follow the recommendations made by the committee, right? So let's see. Mr. Park is a retired environmentalist and his suggestions are revolutionary. मिस्टर पार्क ने एक नोटिफिकेशन रिलीज किया था पर उनके कहने पर सोसाइटी ने लिया तो ये नहीं बोल सकते इसलिए ए को आप आउटराइटली एलिमिनेट कर सकते हो सर्टेन पीपल हैव रेज्ड ऑब्जेक्शंस एंड आर नॉट सेटिस्फाइड द रिस्ट्रिक्शंस अब ये भी एस्पेक्ट हम नहीं बोल सकते राइट Usually, the chosen committee takes decision for the residents of the society and people unanimously agree. So, yes, this we can say. The same measures have also been taken by neighboring society. तो उसकी तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे. It's the duty of the nation, so it's too large or broad to be considered relevant to the argument, right? So clearly, we can pick up C as the right answer. Right, so I hope you really enjoyed solving these questions. You've got the right approach, right, and you've got an understanding. So please continue to stick to the approach, do a lot of scratch paper work, do a lot of practice, and stay consistent. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please help us spread the word. Take care. God bless.